Good evening, good evening, good evening. How's everybody doing?
Hi.
Wonderful.
Good.
Good to see you. Good to see you guys. Welcome to Thursday evening of Awakening Live. Awakening Within. Live.
Awakening Within.
Awakening Live, I said. Yeah, I guess not.
Awakening Live.
Thursday. It's Thursday Live.
Is it Thursday Live? Ah.
And the sun was just out.
Was it peeking out?
Well, it was sunny just about 10 minutes ago after our deluge of flooding.
Yeah, we had quite the rain today.
I opted not to go out today because my mother called me and said people were floating away, and then my appointment I was going to go to, they said, "Are you sure you want to come out?" And I said, "I guess not."
Really? They thought it was that bad, huh?
Yeah.
Wow.
So I mean, that's kind of where we've gotten now. One little bump, nah.
Right.
We can do it virtually somehow. Another day.
Right. That's right. That's right. Yes. Hi, folks. Hi, Heather. Yep. Thanks for the next.
Hello, folks. So, what are we talking about today?
What are we talking about? I think we have a lot of things we're going to talk about today. I have a list. How about you?
Janie's got a list. I have a few bullet points. I mean, I'm not going to show them, but I have a few points that we'll just slip in here. But it's funny. I personally was calling it Corona shaming. I don't know though. What do you think about that?
It sounds like it's against beer. I don't know.
Oh, are you really going to go there? You're fueling.
I'm all about the wine, not the
You're all about the fueling the flames of silliness. Those silly Corona people.
My dad said he just started drinking Corona beer because of Corona.
Well, see, at least that.
I'm sure it's
different.
That kind of makes sense.
To their business.
Wow. So, Suzanne, did you watch our coffee yesterday?
I don't think I was able to get on. I had company.
Oh yeah, we should have asked you to watch that.
We're not. We had a heavy topic, which is what's going on right now, and we always use tonight just to set it up for our audience if they don't know. Our coffee talks are when we actually bring in the audience and kind of talk about those topics, etc. I think Thursday nights we usually kind of have something that we're already going to talk about, and we already discussed, the three of us, that we're going to talk about some things, and I think it all merges into what's going on right now, period. The Corona shaming with the things that are going on politically, the things that are going on in Minnesota. So I think we're not going to talk about those specifically, but what we're going to talk about is our coping mechanisms through this, what we're going to be doing through this. And so the three of us kind of came together on how we cope with this, so tonight is about coping. It's not really about the actual subject matter. So
okay, so I'll be on frame control. So Sandy, you're a little out of frame. If you want to, I think left, there you go. Right. We don't just see half your face. I know you're like, it's okay. So you're good now. Yeah, you're good. And I may say it a few more times. It's okay. We drift. I look at these little tiny narrow windows. I totally agree. I think that I'm always trying to bring it back to part of the reason that we started this show was to talk about the tensions that were rising, the need to understand that we're going to have more tension, and that we need to stay calm for various reasons. And as life coaches, one of the things that we try to help people do is get new perspectives. And during this time when there's this heightened nervousness, anxiety, so on, all sorts of stuff's going to bubble up. And so one of the things that we're starting to see for sure is that, especially as we're getting out now, we're seeing the shaming that's happening, certainly on social media, but it's happening on the media, and it's just taking on this whole tone of itself. And so we want to talk a little bit about how to deal with that, because we're all going through the same thing, and we're going to come down to probably some pretty simple basics, which we tend to do as life coaches. Really, it's sometimes just to remind us, to get back to the basics. But we're all different. We all have to respect that, and so we're going to talk a lot more detail about that general topic of respect, the golden rule, some pretty simple stuff, but we're gonna get there. So, yeah.
Anything to add, Suzanne?
And feel free to pipe in, everybody that's watching, on your questions, your concerns, specifically about the tension and the shaming that's going on, and whatever word you might want to call it. But it's judging. It's judging other people, because we've just got to respect everybody at this point and have some grace. But feel free to put in your questions, your topics that you would like to talk around this idea of shaming and judgment.
Well, I'm not sure if you. I think Sandy, maybe you just begin with this, and we can. I can follow up with that.
Sure. Okay, so what I want to talk about is being offended. I think that people are, going through what we just went through and continuing to go through. I think we just are on triggers. We're on hair triggers, right? We're being offended so easily. And I think we need to get to the root of that sometimes. And I've talked about offendedness a lot. And I actually got triggered myself this week in being kind of offended. So not kind of, but I was offended. So, that's where it is. We're taking some things personal, even just in dialogue on our Facebook posts, whatever. There's a lot of offendedness going on. And we really need to figure out where that comes from, what it's coming from, and what is the solution to help cope through that. So the first thing I have here is knowing that you are offended. Sometimes we don't know we're offended. We just think that's a part of our personality, and that's just who we are or how we act or what we were taught. And really sometimes we're taught being offendedness. Everything, reaches us. So our first tip to not be offended is, accept yourself and others as a work in progress. Not everybody is where you're at. You need to, again, I say this a lot, I think you need to meet the person where they're at, not where you're at. So you really need to work on that. You need to work on yourself and to figure out where that's coming from and why you're offended by that person. What was that? And then give them some grace, right? So, what do you two think of that?
Well, hold on here. I love the word grace because I think that it's a simple term. I think a lot of us understand that's like the peace. That's like giving people respect. So I love that word grace, and I think that's another simple reminder here is that when we're getting frustrated about things and we see things on social media, pause, take a breath, and think about grace. And that we're all really trying to do the best that we can do through this, because we're all in the same boat here. And we're all raised different. We're all different in so many respects.
Yeah. And one thing I think I've learned over a lifetime of making mistakes is that when I come gung-ho out with a cause or a real true belief of mine, and I am just standing on my soapbox for it, most of the time I am regretful afterwards. So just kind of taking it easy, because I don't always know every day, from day to day, from situation to situation, even though I think I might know what the right answer is and what everybody else should do. I don't know what's best for me. So kind of toning back me telling other people what they should be doing, because I don't always know myself.
Of course, if they're paying us to do it, then we can tell them. But so as life coaches, sometimes we get paid for that, but it's really mostly about new perspectives. But joking aside,
right. Well, that's a good segue into discover things that are true that bother you. You have to know yourself. You have to know what is bothering you, and really what is the root to why it's bothering you. And like you're saying, you can go gung-ho in it, and then you go, was that really bothering me, or was that just something I had to process through? Was it just something, that was personal more than global, right? Instead of a global thing. Is that what you mean, Suzanne? Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's just, and I'm muting and unmuting because I have a bossy dog with me right now. She thinks that everything she believes, everybody else should believe.
That sounds familiar.
No, yeah, because it's embarrassing sometimes if I look back at some of my soapboxes or some of my rants. So, just to keep from, embarrassing myself, I've learned to kind of just be quiet and let it ride out. Unless it's something, quite passionate. And then, I think we just know that's something that I'll talk about that later about, what our core values really are and when we can feel pretty strong about standing up for something.
Right.
Well, and I think that one of the things about standing up for something and having grace sometimes are two different things. I mean, sometimes they fold into each other because we're standing up for something, but in the midst of that, we're kind of blaming and shaming. But I think that if you are passionate about something, and there's nothing wrong with certainly talking about and always saying, in my opinion, I try to do that, but sometimes I forget. But in my opinion, here's what I believe, and there's nothing really wrong with that, because that is actually good. It's part of America and so on. It's when we start to judge, and judging doesn't always have to be putting the finger on somebody and saying, you're doing this wrong. It's a tone that you can tell that there's judgment being made. And sometimes it's subtle. And I think it's that we get carried away with our passions, and we don't take a breath and say, am I crossing the line here? Am I judging, somebody else? And sometimes it's clear that it's a really horrible thing that someone has done. Mm-hmm. But once you go down that slippery slope of judging that, you're gonna start to throw it out there for simple things. And I'll just use an example. Right. It's like, we all saw the picture of the Lake of the Ozarks and the people crowded around the pool. And it was pretty easy to put your opinion out there and say, oh my God, how could they do that? They're putting everyone in danger. Very simple topic. But even in that case, you could simply just say, boy, in my opinion, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't put myself in that situation, something to that effect, instead of just basically shaming them. Now, that is a pretty extreme example. But who really knows what the situation is like? Maybe, okay, I'm just throwing this out, but maybe they all knew each other. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Okay, maybe not. But let's just say they're, okay, put it this way. They basically said, the government said, look, you guys, everybody was there, needs to go down and do a 14-day quarantine. If they do that, then really maybe no harm, no foul, right? If they all went and did a 14-day quarantine, they wouldn't be necessary putting other people in danger. And then there's the whole thing about, oh my gosh, do we really know the science here? That's another one of the issues that I believe is causing some of this problem, is do we really know what's going on? Every day we hear something new about the virus. We hear something, and really, what can we believe at this point? And so again, it's up to personal bias. You're going to default to your personal bias based on how you were raised, what's happened in your life, what kind of personal temperament you have, and you're going to default to that bias. But that's no better than someone else's personal bias. And so we don't know the facts, so the fact that we don't know the facts makes it even more imperative that we don't judge, in my opinion.
Right. Or be offended. And being offended about those things and judging about those things is a choice, not an obligation. So
absolutely a choice.
It's a choice. It's totally a choice. You choose to do that. And you're bringing it up. And yeah, I mean, I got triggered by that this weekend myself, about feeling judged, about, I was on vacation, at a beach. And so, it looked like I was not social distancing. So, I felt a little judged about that. And I had a hair trigger, right? So I had a hair trigger, and I, didn't know what to do with that. I got angry about it, because I'm human, and I got angry about it, and I did a slam the door and, kind of thing. So I think all of this is that because we don't know. Nobody knew my situation. They judged me without knowing my situation of who I was around. How did I know that person was safe? And I was out on the beach with the open air blowing. So we don't know the science behind it, but they said that being outside without a mask is okay. So I went with that. Being outside without a mask is okay. And I'll just be honest, the whole state of Florida thinks being out without a mask is okay. Period. So,
which might be different than the people in New York or in people in different areas. Yeah. And that's the thing. And I think you just have to respect that, because that's okay. Yeah. And so that's fine.
Put myself around the people that feel uncomfortable about that. So now I'm going to self-quarantine. I'm going to quarantine for 14 days to not make somebody else feel uncomfortable. And that's just me showing them grace, and also, but at the same time, just trying to follow some guidelines, trying to find, not to make somebody else feel uncomfortable, but I mean, if it was going to harm me to do that, then that might be another discussion. But I don't want to offend anybody, and I don't want to be offended. So that's why we're talking about this, because I was offended. I had to check in with myself. Why am I offended? The reason I was offended is I'm a people pleaser. And when I don't think that people are liking me or are judging me, I feel like, oh, I don't like that. And that goes back to a core thing with me of being a people pleaser.
I'm so glad you said that, because I mean, really, that's where everything boils down to, is where we're coming from. So, and you and I, Sandy, are both people pleasers. So, by all means, we do everything. We don't want anybody to dislike us until it crosses the line of our core values. And that's where I think, the saying, you have to stand for something or you fall for anything. And, and I don't think that as an adult that I have even, well, I have now, because I've had to do a lot of work for myself, on myself. But I think a lot of adults, whatever adults means, maybe haven't taken the time to actually really think, what their values are. We are raised with certain values, we're raised with beliefs, but have we actually really thought about, where do I cross the line here? Do I, like this whole thing going on with the racism, and it's just like, it's like, well, I'm not going out and protesting, but I feel like I'm doing my own thing just by being a good person in my own hula hoop. And so it's confusing, but I think what you touched on is that you don't want anybody to not like you, but there's a reason. That is not a bad thing. I mean, really. I mean, why not? We want people to like us. We want to be happy. We want to share that. So that's something that we shame ourselves for, even that, to be people pleasers. That's like a negative, a negative connotation, and it shouldn't be. We just want people to be happy. Like my thing is, when I go to the grocery store, I'm going down the aisle, and I think everybody is feeling like me. Not like me right now.
So, should we read some of these comments? Because we've got some good comments that are varying ways. So let me just read a couple of these. Donna put it up there that some things she believes needs to be judged. Michael said, and I think in the joking, he says that I was at Coconuts and I met all of them, and now he thinks that he needs a quarantine until 2025. Donna isn't necessarily agreeing with us at this point, but she says it's okay, and I agree, because that's why we're here. We are here to just talk about these issues. Heather says that Pastor Ron Carpenter said that today that the coasts are completely opposite thoughts on this. The West Coast is freaking out, and the East Coast is like nothing is happening. Interesting, you know?
So where does that put us in the middle, right?
Yeah, it puts us in the middle. We're kind of in the middle. Hey, that works for me. Donna says that sometimes we are responsible to protect others.
Yeah, but yours, yeah.
So I'm of, first of all, we protect ourselves. It's about the oxygen mask. Put it on yourself first. Protect yourself first. And again, not everybody agrees with this. Everybody, if they protect themselves, and it's your own responsibility to protect yourself. Of course, we talk about grace. We talking about wanting to help each other. Absolutely so. But the thing on my perspective is that we don't have all this stuff facts. So what one person believes that they need to help somebody, another person may believe, well, we don't have to, because we don't know the facts about the virus.
Right.
We really don't know the darn facts. It's extremely frustrating, and I think it's causing a lot of this angst.
Right.
Because you can say, well, if you're at the Lake of the Ozarks and you're doing what they were doing, that they're putting other people in danger. Well, if we knew the absolute facts, then maybe we could say absolutely with no question.
Right.
I don't think we do.
Right. So if somebody doesn't come back and has the virus after being all together, then what are we going to think?
Yeah, but human nature is, I mean, how many things do we do every day, even those of us who think we're responsible, that are wrong for the environment, that are wrong for our own bodies? We have the information, and yeah, that sounds like, oh yeah, if I knew that I could do that and be safe, I would do that. Or if I knew that would maybe make someone else sick, I wouldn't do that. I don't think we're that great of policy holders, actually.
Well,
I'm not. I mean, if I really believe that the virus is out there, which I do, and that I could spread it or that I could get it, I would probably not ever go out. So the fact that I just go out and try to do, something manageable, is certainly a judgeable.
I just want to throw in, because I don't have the answers either, but people are saying that there's over 100,000 dead, and that's a shocking number. But people dispute the number. People dispute that number because a lot of people that had other conditions that they died from are being included in the COVID numbers, and so those numbers aren't necessarily factual. It's my belief. It's my opinion, but there's been a lot of people that have said that.
Well, and that is the problem, and that's why we're not here to debate any of that.
No, we're not,
because we don't know the facts. We don't know the facts. We're given the facts, and you take those facts and you disseminate that, and that's where this offendedness comes in. Because some believe it is, and some believe it isn't. Some are offended that we're wearing masks. Some are offended that we're not wearing masks. So that's where the offendedness comes in.
Well, let me ask you this, Sandy, on the offendedness. So, is part of us being offended that people attach themselves to a certain fact, and when you attach yourself to that fact, and then someone has a different fact, you're almost offended. Well, they don't agree with that fact on me, and I hesitate to call them facts, because just about every day they come out with new information that is different than what they had before, and I don't think it's anybody's fault. This is new. We're learning this, but we all get offended because we attach ourselves to one thing or another, and then the next day we hear something new.
Yes. So this is where that's where this whole discussion comes up. Is okay. So we don't know we do know the facts. We don't know the facts. We're kind of in the middle. So as a responsible person, exactly what they were talking about, like me, I'm going to self-quarantine now for 14 days because I feel that is a responsible thing. At first I was mad about it, and then I was like, well, you know what? If that makes somebody else feel better that I'm doing that, and that they feel protected and that they feel safe, that's fine. Is it hurting me? And I have to ask myself, is this hurting me? No.
And what you did, right, is put yourself second.
Self-quarantining is not going to hurt me because I've now done it for 3 months. So I think I'm going to be good for 14 days, So is it hurting me? No. Is it going to help bring peace and not give fear to somebody else? Yes. So that's why I'm going to do that. And so that's my own opinion. That's my own decision. And I'm going to assume I'm not going to be offended that people feel that way, because I'm just going to, I am giving them grace, and I'm going to just assume that they have a good heart. And that's part of techniques of being offended, how you are supposed to handle offendedness. You assume the other person has a good heart, and they just don't understand your perspective. They just don't understand where you're coming from. They don't understand, where you are,
and that's okay.
And that's okay.
Let me be a devil's advocate then. Mm-hmm. So say that you came home and you had been offended or shamed for doing your vacation and how you conducted yourself. Let's say you came home and thought, no, things are opening up. The government is, encouraging us to try to do things smartly and with, precautions. And you went ahead and just carried your life, in slow steps of caution.
Okay.
So devil's advocate says, why would you not do that? Is it because you really are very concerned with this one person, or maybe it's just self-doubt? That's a question. So how did you come to that decision for yourself?
Because of my confidence level and facts not being sturdy and stable.
Perfect.
I don't know. So yeah. I don't know if I am. I don't know if I'm not. And so therefore, let's go in the caution lane. And so this is the caution lane. And this is me being hypersensitive, cautious about it now. Like I said, at first I was a little upset. And then I said, you know what, get out of the way. Get your, sometimes you got to get out of your own way and what you're thinking and not be self-centered. Do think about others. Now, not to your own detriment. Like I said, if it was something detrimental, but I think quarantining for 4 days is not detrimental. I just did it for 3 months. I did it. I can do it. 14 days is a breeze.
Well, I commend you for that. I commend you for that.
What are you going to do?
Yeah, that you're not sure. We're not sure. Who knows? So err on the side of caution.
That's right.
Thank you.
That's right.
That's right. I think that's amazing.
Well, I think it's, but also too is that she's just doing a really good, graceful thing, and that's thinking of other people before herself. Yeah, it won't kill her, but is it inconvenient? Yeah, a little bit, but she wants to err on that side, and so I agree that's the grace that we all want to talk about, and whether we dispute the numbers or not. I mean, that's not really the issue at all, right? And it's about what are we doing to be graceful to our next door neighbor and so on. So there are people that are really attached to one side or the other, and that's okay. I respect that. I usually am somewhere in the middle, so I'm gonna actually err a little bit on the more conservative side, but I'm also not going to completely let it shut down my life. I'm going to do what I think is the smart thing to do to protect myself, my family, and anyone else. I'm going to wear masks, but I'm going to go out. But I'm going to try to do, what I can do and stay 6 feet apart and whatever. And if I was in a situation that was questionable by other people that I was going to get it, and it was concerning other people in my family, then hopefully I would do the same thing.
Yeah. Well, and some of these points of being offended, just on a being offended period is put yourself in their shoes and try to see it from their perspective. So somebody else has another perspective. And really, this is a little more bigger of a perspective because it has to do with actually having a virus that could kill somebody. So this is a huge perspective. If they think that that's going to hurt them and harm them, I certainly don't want to add to that fear level. And I certainly don't want to have them come down with it and absolutely look at me and go, well, that was you that absolutely did that. So that's the other thing is like, I don't really want to know that I blatantly did that just out of wanting to be around people, but that does give us a whole different, I could be offended, but I'm choosing not to. That's what I'm choosing not to do. And also, sometimes we get offended because of past hurts, right? So we're offended by some things that happened to us before, not for the present thing. So if I ever was left out of something before, or something, or someone kept me, or I was grounded for 14 days. Now, I have been grounded for 14 days before. So maybe I'm holding on to that when I was grounded as a teenager, I'm offended by that. So now I'm rebelling, and I'm not going to do that. I really had to process all that for real. Like, I really did have to process that because of the family dynamics I have, of being quarantined. So anyway,
I think that
go any more into my own situation, but I just want to talk about the global.
Yeah, and I think though that what that dovetails into what I was saying, because then I agree, is that we all have different life experiences. So that's why we can't judge, because we don't know. We haven't walked in their shoes. We don't know what's triggering them. We may not agree with it, but how can we really condemn it? And since, again, I'll just keep bringing this back, because we don't have all the facts. Right. It's really hard to judge and condemn somebody. And the thing is that this is just really human. It's human to want to. It's human to bring your own life situations into it. It takes extra effort to have the grace. And that's what we're trying to say, let's try to live into that.
Yeah. Well, all I'm talking about right here is the coronavirus, and COVID or COVID-19. I don't even know what to call it anymore. Anyway, that's where I'm getting like, whoa, okay. So, there are some things, and I saw that Vance had a comment. I see that there's comments going on there. Preventing someone to get sick and that kind of thing. So I'm talking just in my own situation. Sometimes we do need to be offended, but not maybe offended. We need to be upset. So I don't think offended to me is about just having an attitude against somebody, not in more trivial things, right? I guess you would say, when you're offended by somebody. I mean, I'm trying to think of some times that I have been offended just by somebody saying something, but not, I think of being offended with somebody harming somebody or physical harm is a whole different story. That's not offense. That's not even a thing.
Yeah. If they say things about sexuality
I'm just talking about conversational offended. I'm offended, by different things. I don't know. I can't
we call it triggers. We call
I worked on it so hard.
We call it triggers, Sandy, right?
I called it a trigger.
Well, I mean, that's what we call it in the life coaching world, is that we're triggered.
Yeah.
It's all based upon our life experiences and how we were raised and how we were brought up. Things that happen now trigger us back to those feelings. That's extremely human. That's going to happen to all of us, and it does. And in fact, that's what people pay us for, is to help them understand that a lot of the issues going on in their life are basically based on what happened when they were, 0 to 8 years old.
Yeah, I worked in fast food when I was a teenager. Did you guys work in fast food? Either of you? You did?
Yeah.
No.
Restaurant.
Okay, so people get very offended about their food. I mean, they get offended. I mean, you get their order wrong. You don't smile at them when you're handing them the bag. I mean, they get offended about food, or in that arena, believe it or not. Well, of course you could believe it, but I've caught myself being offended about the way that I got an order, or the person treated me, or that thing. So I'm just going to bring that around to, and I think to myself of when I was on the other end of it, so I try not to be offended by things, because I usually know that the person speaking and taking your order is not the one filling the order, so that's not the person you need to be mad at in the first place. So that takes you to, you can be offended by just those silly little things, if they don't make my burger right, I'm offended, right? I'm mad. I want good customer service. And then if the manager doesn't do the right thing, then I'm offended even more, So we can walk around being offended about lots of things. I mean, how many times have your order been wrong? I mean, it, happens, right? Or anything like that. And so, you have to think, has this drama played out for me before? Is that why I'm offended? Is it because of past things that have just built up? You really have to just sit back and ask yourself a lot of questions, a lot of inventory on why you're being offended and what is offending you. But you have to know yourself. That's what you have to work on. I mean, if we're all just reactionary all the time, we're going to be offended about everything.
Well, and you're going to live in that negative zone. And do you want to live in the negative cloud of being offended all the time? Or do you want to have some grace and let the nature of being a happy person affect your health? If you're offended easily and you're negative, you're going to be unhealthy.
Right.
There's a lovely saying. It says, if everyone is singing the same note, there's no harmony. And I really like that. Because just like I spent a long time, and I'm sure I still do, wanting everybody to believe just the way I do, because I think I'm right.
Right.
My decisions are right. I know what's going on. I think I'm pretty good at admitting when I don't know what's going on, but right. I still want you to believe the way I do. And so, but that's the beauty of it. The beauty is if everybody thinks the way I do, then there's just no harmony.
Right. And that brings me to the next point. Sometimes you need the conflict to be enlightened and educated. So sometimes you're so offended by somebody else's opinion or their idea but you don't realize that you're being enlightened and educated. There's many times I'll say, I'm going to debate you on something, but if you can change my mind and you can educate me further and just not speak to me as if I don't know something, because I have an opinion. Sometimes I need that education. Sometimes I need that enlightenment, with my friends and iron sharpens iron. And, I need those sandpaper people. I need sandpaper people in my life because that helps polish you off. You need that debate. You need those conversations sometimes. And that's where you can go without being offended, is you sit there and you say, they're trying to teach me something, or I'm trying to learn something. You're no longer, looking just for the offense. You're going, oh, okay, I want to listen to what you have to say. So listening is huge. Respect and trying to learn something and not being offended and just not having your own self-centeredness and what you want to say, right?
Right.
Yep.
So that's my thing on being offended. And of course I want to move into, after you're offended, what do you need to do? You have to have forgiveness. So, maybe change our topic over to forgiveness, just in these instances of being offended. There are lots of instances that we need to deal with forgiveness. We need to deal with forgiving ourselves. We need to deal with forgiving others, or forgive, things that we've done to others. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think what Scott said is, you make a decision, how long am I going to carry this out? Do I want to hold this? Do I want to keep feeling this way? And forgiveness is a huge part of that. It's like, we can hold on to a you done me wrong our whole life, and all we do is get more bitter as the day and years go by. So how long do you want to hold on to that? And the grace of forgiveness is actually much more powerful for us. Mm-hmm. So and it's just a surrender, when you've had enough, and it's like you finally, it's like, I can't do this anymore. But some people, sadly, some people don't get there. They are energized by the bitterness. They're energized by that feeling of drama, just upset. And it's just like, oh, good, there's another one. Yay, I can keep going. I can keep feeling like this. And they're looking for it, and it comes to them. But some of us have awakened and said, that's not really the way that I want to live. And so you just surrender. And whether you find that through a higher power or a life coach or a friend or, sometimes just Mother Nature, you can become awakened like that. So forgiving is...
Forgiveness.
Heather made a good point here. She says that is the feeling useful or does it just belong in the trash? And it's I love that. I love when we can think of simple issues that we all deal with in life. And if you're holding on to grudges and you're judging other people, what is the usefulness of it? It doesn't help you. It doesn't help them. And it should just go in the trash. I have a book that I wanted to recommend, and it's about judgment. And let me see here. It's a book by Gabby Bernstein called Judgment Detox. And interesting book because, and I'm not even sure why I picked it up, but at some point I picked this book up a while ago and I started reading it. It was one of the hardest books to read because we all judge so much. And here's a quote from the book, her definition. She says, "My definition of judgment for this book is pretty straightforward. Separation from love. The moment we see ourselves as separate from anyone else, we detour into a false belief system that is out of alignment with our true nature, which is love. Deep down, we are all loving, kind, and compassionate beings. There are many spiritual terms for this, such as Buddha nature, spirit, source, and God. And throughout this book, I'll refer to this truthful state as love." So I thought that was pretty interesting, how to capture it. But I know one thing about when I started to read this book, and I haven't finished it because it's one of those books where, oh my God, it's so demanding because we just don't even know the little tiny places that we judge. And we think, oh, I'm not judgeful, whatever. You read this book and you'll find that we're judging all the time. It's human nature. And I give myself grace and everyone gives themselves grace because it's such human nature and in the tiniest ways. But when you read a book like that, it starts to build on you. You think, well, if I'm being judgeful in this little way, wow, if I'm being super judgeful to somebody and shaming, then wow, boy, do I have a lot to do, to really improve. So I thought it was interesting. It's an interesting book. So I'd recommend anybody maybe just picking that up. Just see what you think.
Good. That's good. Well, I have me talking about forgiveness. I'm reading a book called Everything Happens for a Reason. It's by Myra Kirschenbaum, and sometimes we're talking about some feelings like Heather was saying, some just go in the trash. Well, sometimes you need to get to the root of why you're having that emotion in the first place, and a lot of things do come from unforgiveness. So when you have unforgiveness in certain areas, there's some questions that you need to dig down and ask yourself. Is there unforgiveness because of obviously things that have happened to you? By our ages, we have some baggage, right? We've got a lot of things we've went through, situations we've been through. But there's sometimes you don't realize that it's unforgiveness that we're dealing with. I have just a couple of questions to ask yourself. Do you think a lot about some of the ways you've been hurt or about disappointments you've suffered in the past? Do you get angry a lot or have been holding on to anger for a long time? Some of us know when we get angry and triggered, that root is from unforgiveness. That anger comes out in a certain way and we don't know why. Now there's some other things to be angry about. I know we talked a lot about that yesterday. So I'm not going to go into that today. But there are true things to be angry about. But there are other things that are triggers to us that we're angry about. So, that's bringing unforgiveness in there. Do you spend time having if only fantasies, like if only I would have made this decision? And that's having unforgiveness for yourself. When you feel like you've made mistakes. I've caught myself. I called myself stupid mistakes. And the root of that is unforgiveness. I'm not forgiving myself for those decisions I made. Why am I not? So I have to, start working on those places. Do you feel envious of somebody else? Sometimes unforgiveness is there, which we don't really always think that envy has anything to do with this, but it's forgiving somebody for having taken something from us, or us not having done something ourselves that would get us to a place to have whatever that is that we're being envious about. But in some important way, do you not feel safe or secure in your life? Forgiveness gives us a sense of security. Unforgiveness just kind of makes you always feel like things are happening to you, people are doing things to you, or you're even self-sabotaging, and you have some unforgiveness there. So we're always trying to get there, but what do you guys recommend for someone to help with forgiveness in your coaching practices? What do you guys usually recommend for them to do? What are some steps, a step or some coaching steps that you ask them to do to release some of that? One of you guys.
Well, for just right off the top of my mind, most everything I always go about it is, where is your fear? And as soon as you can identify where the fear is, then everything just kind of falls into place. And we don't think that we're in fear. Normally, we don't think anything is, but I mean, you're either in fear or you're not. So when you're at a crux and you're not feeling right, you're afraid of something. You're afraid you're going to lose something. You're afraid you're not going to get something. You're afraid what somebody's thinking. So it's pretty clear for me, and I think if that's where I would start at, is just identifying what you're afraid of.
That's good. And I did mention, with unforgiveness, I mean, I've been in a place where, I've been mad at God, and I wasn't forgiving him for so much, I was blaming. So that's another place that that you have unforgiveness, when you start blaming, other people for situations. Now, there are situations where other people did cause something, but I'm just talking in general. Sorry, excuse me. But where does that forgiveness come from? Even if somebody did something to you that they needed to be forgiven, or that forgiveness is like a debt, that paying off a debt. When you forgive someone, you forgive them of that debt, and just don't imagine until you do it, that weight that comes off of you at that time. You really, it kind of like builds up, and that person sometimes doesn't even know that you have unforgiveness for them. And in many different arenas, just saying to yourself that you forgive that person. You don't always have to tell the person that you forgive them, because sometimes they don't even know that there's an issue. But if that's going to make you feel better, in journaling it, writing those things out is something that I always recommend. Write a letter to that person. Admit that you have it. Some of us think, oh, well, I'm supposed to forgive everybody if I want to be forgiven, so I don't have unforgiveness issues. Well, yeah, you might. And so you really have to get real with that. You really have to say, okay, this happened to me, so I probably do need to forgive this person for this, this situation. So, you have to name it, really name it, write it down. You write a letter to that person. You don't have to send it. That doesn't mean you have to send it, but just journaling it out and getting it out can be such a weight lifted. So that's just something that I recommend in my coaching, is just try to get, let's see. I see people are really talking about this one now about forgiveness. So what does forgiveness do for us, though? what does forgiveness do?
Well, Heather says forgiveness isn't about the other person; it's for you. And and you've heard that scenario where I always help me with this. Taking the poison and hoping the other person dies.
Yes.
So when you're forgiving someone, you stop taking the poison yourself.
Right. So I can't, let's see. Okay. So, all right. So Donna says, I can't forgive being raped. I can forgive being called fat. I don't believe everyone deserves grace. Sorry. So
that's fine. We can talk about these things on the spectrum of severe to not severe to the middle. Typically, we're talking about the middle because very severe, violent issues that happen are pretty easy to pick a side on. But there's a lot of things that are in the middle. They're in the gray. They're just simple things of life that we get hung up on and wrapped around the axle. And this is what I think a lot of people don't understand. It's really the simple things in life that we let really trip us up. The clear things about rape and about murder, pretty easy to kind of get on a side of that, really, for most of us. It's that middle stuff. And holding grudges, judging people, and not having forgiveness is all negative states. They're negative emotions. So you're going to be hurt by it, always. Now, you can, again, judge that. If you're raped or there's murder or something severe, there's other issues involved here, other coping issues here. But so many things. Somebody looks at you the wrong way. Somebody, cuts you off in traffic or whatever. These are the things mainly that we're talking about, because these are the things that day after day after day, if you're focusing on all these little things, they build up. And if you're constantly holding a grudge and judging people and you're living in these low states of energy, these are the states of energy that deplete our immune system.
Yeah. And that's where forgiveness has to come in. Forgiving is for your own benefit. I mean, it isn't for the other person. Exactly what Heather said. Forgiveness is for you. Yeah. So Heather has a scenario, and I think we all have a scenario, and I think that's why we're talking about it. Forgiveness is big, and sometimes in the emotion around it, you're not in a place to forgive yet. I think there's a process to that. I don't think you can forgive something right off the bat. I think it is something that you have to work on and process. And some things are, we feel are unforgivable. It's a hard one. Forgiveness is a hard one. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I didn't pick a light subject, to say the least. A lot of things can, we each go through situations. Heather's talking about her situation. And holding on to the anger, like you said, is having poison. Is that poison is just going through your body, like you talk about, Scott. That it depletes your immune system and those things. Our emotions are tied to it. There are a lot of things that are acceptable to agree about and have unforgiveness about. Our society accepts that. It's okay, but you have to come to a place that could eat you up, that could actually deter you. You could, it could make you be fatigued and not get out of bed. I mean, there are scenarios where it is harming yourself, and just trying to work that out and process that.
Yeah.
So, it's not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing to do. Nobody's saying it is, and it's just something. It's a goal to strive for. It's kind of like having a goal of forgiveness, because the relief of it, of forgiveness, is unlike other things. So I know a lot of people are saying
that's a core value of forgiveness. I want to be forgiving. And like you said, it changes every day. And so, like, today I'm not able to forgive that. And maybe I keep accepting, the way people are talking to me like this. I keep just, letting that it's not bothered me enough until maybe tomorrow. It's like, you know what? And back to your boundaries thing, Sandy, the tomorrow is when I don't accept that anymore. Or tomorrow is when I am able to forgive you for that, so I can move on.
Yeah. I mean, I think that you guys are commenting really good things. I mean, to discuss, like Michael says, it's on a belief system too. And what is that belief system? Who is your source? What is your source? Me personally, I mean, I think you guys know where I stand. I believe in Jesus, so I believe if he wants to forgive me, I have to forgive and myself, because I've done things to myself that are horrendous as well. So, I mean, there's the thing. It depends on what your belief system is. And I know, we've got some raw subjects these days, and talking about this is hard. I mean, it's hard, but living it out is hard too. Keeping it all in and living in that state is, and it's going to do harm to yourself. It's going to do harm to you eventually. Having unforgiveness for others is absolutely going to, deplete your immune system. It's going to deplete your emotional system, and it's going to build up walls around you that you'll never let anybody in and love you, or all those things.
It's just a cycle, because
it can be very damaging.
The cycle will just repeat on itself. So if you can't forgive, you're going to feel worse. You're going to feel physically worse. You're going to feel mentally worse. You're going to probably judge more. You're going to be in a negative zone. I mean, you could pick just one of these. And in fact, we're about to run out of time here. And if I could summarize some of these, I think we talked about most of these things, but some of the things that we can do, and we talked about a lot of these, but understand that everybody has a choice. Everybody has a viewpoint that we don't know their viewpoint necessarily, and to remember that. Judgment, don't judge. I'll tell you what, this book, if you take a look at this book and even read parts of it in the summary or even the sample, you will see where we're judging in the smallest places. And judgment leads to all the others. It's like being ungrateful, unforgiving. The golden rule, just treat people as you'd want to be treated. That's a simple one. Get centered. Again, we talk about this. We didn't talk about it a lot tonight, but to get centered into either prayer or meditation, take a walk, exercise, look at the situation. What can I control? What can I really control? And if you really can't, throw it in the trash can, as Heather would say. It isn't going to do you any good. Look at your core values and align with that. And if one of your core values is to be a forgiving, loving person, then try to remember that, because sometimes we just forget and we get caught up in this situation. Come back to your core value and just check in with it. Am I living today according to what I believe are my core values, or have I strayed off? And we do it. It happens to all of us. And then look into being offended and how simply we can be offended, and is it really worth it? Is it helping us at all to be offended? Probably not. Again, we're not talking about always severe things. Those things are pretty clear on how you need to deal with them. Even those things, though, at some point, some of these things have to come into play, because if they continue, you're going to suffer, right? And we've talked about that a lot tonight.
Those things can empower you and get you in like I was saying, the sandpaper people and conflicts can enlighten you sometimes into doing something, into taking action for something. So I think that we can make that and then go forward. But we have to be emotionally sound. We have to be emotionally grounded and centered to help others to do that. If we're going to take action, we have to be in a stable emotional state in the first place. And so those other things do have to fall into place at some point, you know. So anyway.
Well, that's all our time for tonight. 10. Thank you, everybody, for joining.
I talked a lot.
Thanks for joining.
All good.
We had another great discussion, and we don't have all the answers for sure, and we're just here to hopefully open up some discussion and to just help give out some perspectives. Yeah. So thanks again, guys.
Yeah, and share the show. Share this, you know, for us, with us. We appreciate our core people that support us and come on and have comments, and we are appreciative of that. We want that. We want your interaction, and it's appreciated.
It is. So. Well, thank you, everybody. Yeah. Cue the music. Right. A little bit of chill music.
Peace out.
Bye, everybody.